Hey, what's going on, guys? Ali Brathwaite here.
And Arlene Brathwaite.
And if this is your first time tuning into our podcast, It's About Time, then welcome.
Welcome.
For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, my name is Ali Brathwaite, and I did a 21-year bid in prison, and Arlene did it with me.
Yes. Today, we're going to be talking about children of incarcerated parents and how their incarceration affected them. We have Takeila on the line, and her father went to prison when she was only 1 year old and was released when she turned 12.
Yeah, I definitely can't wait to hear about the effects that parents' incarceration has on their child, because just from that introduction, he went to prison when she was 1 and didn't come home until she was 12. Mm-hmm. So that means that he missed her first steps, her first words, her first day of school, teaching her how to ride a bike. Mm-hmm. I mean, he missed a lot of milestones, or we can call them life lessons, mm-hmm. or instances where he had time to bond with her as a father and a daughter, and he missed all of that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how missing those moments played a role in her I guess, being an adult today, and how it's affected her and her relationships.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So let's get Takeila on this line here. Takeila, you there?
Mm-hmm. Takeila, today we're talking about children of incarcerated parents and how their incarceration affected them. Which parent was incarcerated?
My father was incarcerated.
And what age were you when your father was incarcerated?
My father went to prison at the age of 1. I was 1. He came home at the age of 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So, so what, he did 11 years?
Yes, sir.
Before you, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
That is a lot of time. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So basically, he wasn't in your life for any of your childhood. So
none.
When it came to your first steps, your first words, your first day of school, he wasn't there to teach you how to ride a bike, no prom, graduation, your first heartbreak. I mean, like none of these. And it's crazy because these are the times or the moments that, a parent bonds with their child. These are like milestones, almost like lessons in life. And it's these times that, he wasn't there for you, So in a situation that you were in with your father being in prison for most of your, or all of your childhood and a little bit of your young adult life, what were some of the ways, if any, that you were able to bond with your father while he was incarcerated?
Yes. So I recall times where me and my grandparents, my father's parents, we would go visit him at the prison that he was at. He typically would be moved around often, but at those prisons, they would sometimes have events that I could attend. And while attending those events, we could spend time together. We could sit together and, eat with one another and bond that way. It wasn't, through a glass wall or, on the telephone. We could actually spend time together. And that was something positive that I remember as far as spending time with him or bonding with him. I wasn't able to do that as a younger child. This didn't happen until I was maybe 8 or 9, until I was a little bit older. But as a younger child, my mother didn't allow me to go spend time or bond with him at all. It just wasn't an option. So that was something that I do recall as far as, bonding with him and spending time with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, bonding is very important, by way of, those visits, family reunion programs, the AKA trailer visits in New York State, the phone calls, the video chats. Any of these forms of bonding is really good when you have an incarcerated parent.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. And you said that your mother didn't let you go at a younger age. It wasn't until the age of 8 that you were able to go see your father?
Yeah, around age 8, 9, just until I was a little bit older. Because when I was younger, again, I was 1 when he went to jail. So I spent a huge chunk of my younger life not knowing that he was in jail. I just thought that he wasn't around or he didn't exist. As a younger child, I didn't understand that. And it wasn't a conversation that my mother had with me until I was older. And when, after we had that conversation, then she allowed me to go to the prison and see him. Because it just, I don't know if she just assumed it was something that I wouldn't be able to mentally process. But I never went as a younger child. I went once she, sat me down and told me that this was happening. Your father is in jail for this reason, and even when she told me the reason, I still didn't understand it. Because he went to prison for, selling drugs. So as a 7, 8-year-old, I still didn't understand what all of that was about. But, I still went to go see him and, we spent time together. It never really felt genuine, I guess I should say, because I just really didn't know him. We would go spend time together. I knew that he was my dad, but I didn't know him, so it was like just someone that I was building a relationship with. And, he was promising things while he was in prison. And, it just made me feel good as a child because I'm like, oh, when he comes home, we're going to go to Disney World. I'm thinking of things like that. But the relationship was never as solid as I wished it could have been.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that because I don't think a relationship with a child and their parent can ever be solid while that parent is in prison. Because even though you go see him,
absolutely.
I mean, you see him maybe once a week. And with you, it was, your grandparents were taking you, so it was probably, once a month maybe, or
once every other month,
something like that. So, I mean, how much bonding can you really do with your father one day out of the month?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And then only for a certain amount of time, whether it's 6 hours or 8 hours, you're still in one room. You're in a visiting room. It's not like you guys are able to go to the store, go to the park. You can do different activities together. It's like y'all are in this one room for 6 hours. I mean, how much can you really talk about? How much can you really bond with each other? Plus, he's splitting his time up with you and his parents, because his parents was the one that was bringing you, right?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
so he was splitting his time up between trying to talk to them, trying to spend time with you. So I mean, the bond, like you said, it's not really there genuinely. And then of course he couldn't see interaction. You couldn't see interactions between him and your mother to see how they get along and stuff. So, people believe that, okay, as long as the kid is being brought to the facility to see their parent, that's good for them. The child will be okay. And in actuality, that's not enough. Of course it's a start, but it's just not enough. And like you said, you didn't have that genuine, I guess, connection with him because of the incarceration. While you were on a visit with your father and you was having this bonding time as much as you could, what were some of the things that you and him used to do together?
I really can't recall anything significant. I just recall us sitting down. For one, my father has never been a huge talker or communicator, so I think that plays a part in why our relationship is the way that it is today. But, even back then, just going to see him, it would just be lots of silence. And then when we were speaking, it was, just often about him telling me things that we would do once he would come home. So it was either us talking about those future plans or us eating. Those are the only things that I can remember. I really don't remember anything else. I don't remember him holding me or, embracing me. I'm sure there was a time where I received a hug from him or a kiss, but I can't remember any of that. I just remember going to see him, sitting next to him, us eating, talking amongst each other, and just talking about things that we would do. But I don't remember anything like, nice or anything that was to the point where it sticks with me, like that was something my father did. I don't remember anything like that.
Okay. And then you said he used to tell you about things that y'all was going to do when he got out, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like
future plans.
okay, yeah, like maybe going to the park or something, or an amusement park, or out to eat or something.
Yeah, it was always extravagant. You know, we would go to Disney World. We would go to the to the zoo. You know, it was always like extravagant things. It was never anything simple. It was just those things that he would say that would get me excited. You know, just to get me to look forward to him coming home. But when he came home, yeah, none of that happened, unfortunately. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Yeah. That while he was in prison, he was talking,
made all these promises,
and then when he got home, it didn't happen.
Yeah, so I think that because my father went to jail really young. I think he went to jail at 18. Because my mother, so he was really young, and to do 11 years, you know, when you get out, I think that, you know, whether you have kids or not, I think that the focus is how can I catch back up? How can I, you know, get back all 20 years that I just lost, you know? So when he came home, those were the things that he was focused on. He was focused on getting the latest car, you know, women, clothes. His focus just wasn't me. It wasn't. And I think that's what played a part in it. I feel like had my father went to jail and, you know, did a sentence of maybe 2 to 3 years, I'm pretty sure he would have came home and I would have been a priority. But because he spent so much time in jail, and then to get out and your child is 12, 13, you know, she already has an opinion. She already has a mind. I think that, you know, he thought that it was probably in his best interest to keep the distance and to just build himself up, even though I don't think that was the best decision. But I'm trying to think for him. And you know, I think that's maybe what his thought process was on it. Because I was, you know, 12 when he got out, and I did have an opinion, you know, after I learned, okay, this is what you went to jail for. You know, you left my mother to raise me alone because you decided to do something illegal, you know. Right. So I did have an opinion, and I didn't resent him for it, but I didn't think it was cool either, you know. So, you know, it was just, you know, I think that with him, he was just thinking that it was best to stay away and get himself together, and then once all of that happens, he would come back. It's just he never came back.
And that is so true. That is so true. Because even from my perspective, when I came home, it's like I had all these dreams that I promised everyone. When I got home, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. It was the same exact thing, you know. And, you know, to my defense, I was in prison. All I can do is just basically think about the future and the different ways I wanted to see it play out and stuff like that. And I would share those dreams with people. But getting out, it just like changed my whole perspective. Any dreams that I planned for, that I had, it just basically went out the window because I was like a kid in a candy shop. It was like going from no freedom to having all the freedom in the world was like, I didn't know how to act. It's like, even though I had these plans, I didn't know what I want to do, what I wanted to do first. I just wanted to do stuff, period. So it's like those plans that I had, like to go see people when I got out, it just didn't happen. It was almost like whatever's in front of me is what I'm going to do. You know, of course, my wife.
Exactly.
Yeah, so my wife came to pick me up from the facility. So that was just my focus. It was like, I finally get to see her outside of a prison setting. You know, let's go eat. And then as we're even just driving in the car, I was just amazed at being in a car, because I wasn't in a car for 21 years. I was used to buses, those prison buses getting transferred from facility to facility. So to be sitting in the front seat of a car with her, it just was like sensory overload. And to be able to get out the car, to be walking around people, to be sitting in a diner as opposed to a mess hall, to be able to look at a menu and decide what I want to eat as opposed to somebody telling me what I'm going to eat. All that stuff was just, it was new to me. It really excited me, and it just took me off track of any dreams and plans that I made while I was in prison. You know, so again, I'm not justifying what your father did, because I think, you know, personally, he should have, one of his plans should have been to come home and see you and spend time with you. So I'm not saying that what he did was right, But by the same token, I do understand that when we first get home, it's like you said, we want to catch up. We want to catch up for all the stuff that we missed. And sometimes, sometimes that's not always the right thing. Sometimes instead of trying to play catch up, just slow down and take your time, and but again, here I am giving that information. I didn't even do that. You know what I mean? I got out there and was racing at 100 miles an hour, just trying to get everything until I guess finally I got to that point where I said, okay, slow down. You're not going back to prison, so you don't have to do everything in one day. So take your time. And once I was able to level out and find that balance, then I was able to do things, that I wanted to do.
I think that the thing here is not him doing things first, right? It's more or less like, okay, stop in, say, check in on us, and then catch up. Oh, a phone call. So I understand, Takeila, what you're talking about here, because that is a hurtful situation. You know what I mean? Even though you can't make the promises, right? Make the connection. That's a phone call, right? Knock on my door. So I think that's what she's saying here, and what makes it so hurtful, because again, we wouldn't know what's going on with the person that's been locked down. We're understanding now because you share it, right? But if that's not shared with us, we don't know. So you know what I mean? So it looks like Dad's telling me all these dreams, these false dreams, and all these promises of doing things with me. And he didn't call or knock at my door, right? So that's when you hurt. That's where the hurtful part comes in. Not that you don't understand a person got to catch up, right? So, that hurt is what we're dealing with now. And a lot of people deal with that because they don't understand the inmate's perspective that we just got from Ali.
Now, did he tell you he was coming home?
No, I had to learn he was home. Just a random day. I was getting my hair done, and I remember my hairdresser. She was doing my hair, and I was younger. Again, I was 12. She was doing my hair, and she was just talking to me. She was like, "Girl, I saw your dad today." And I was like, "No, you didn't." You saw my dad where? She said, "Oh, I saw your dad today." And I guess it clicked instantly after she said it. Because she was like, well, maybe I didn't see him, and she tried to, I was like, no. So as soon as my mom came to pick me up, I told my mom, and, my mom, she called my grandparents, and he was home. And that was how we learned, to this day, I don't know how long he had been home prior to us finding out, so that was already the first sign right there that he had no intention, or maybe he did have an intention, but just wasn't ready.
You weren't his priority.
Be involved, Yeah.
Wow.
That was upsetting.
I can only imagine.
Wow, he came home. You didn't even know he was home. Your mother didn't even know he was home. He just,
I remember him coming by, and it was just really awkward because my mother was upset, and he just seemed unemotional, like it just was, I recall a lot of things like that between me and my dad. He's never been an emotional person. So the few interactions that we had once I was, a teen and a young adult, they were just always just like really awkward. It was never like a daughter-father bond. It was just like, okay, this is this man having a conversation with me. And I never really took heed to any of his advice. Things never clicked between us. And that could be another reason why, he just decided to just stay away, because it just naturally wasn't there between us, unfortunately.
Wow. So your relationship today, how's your relationship today with him?
My relationship with my father today is still non-existent. Not recently, last year, because I actually have a younger sister that he, made once he came home. And she reached out to me on social media, wanting to build a relationship. and I was all for it, of course. And so she invited me to her basketball game. I went, and, you know, I sat on the front row, and I saw him come in. And I know I probably shouldn't have done this, but as soon as I saw him come in, I left. And, and she called me after the game, and she was like, what happened? You know, I didn't see you. And I didn't want to explain it to her, because me and her see him in two different ways, because he was involved in her life. He was not involved in mine. So, I don't want to cloud her judgment of who her father is. I would never do that. So, I just told her that, I wasn't feeling well, so I left. But I feel like she knew exactly why, because it's no secret that the relationship just isn't there between us. So that was the last time that I had seen him. And I remember after speaking with her, maybe like a couple hours later, he called me. I guess he had got my number from her. And he was like, why did you leave the game? And, this is my first time speaking to him, and I don't know how long. And that is what he said. Why did you leave the game? It wasn't, hey, how you doing? How are my grandkids that I have never met? Nothing of that sort. It was, why did you leave the game? And I said, I just wasn't feeling well. And I left it at that. And he was like, okay, well, I'd love to see you and the kids. And I was like, okay, we can set something up. And he said, okay, well, I'll call you back later, and we can, set up a time. He never called back. So that is how just inconsistent, and I hate to use the word toxic, but toxic our relationship is, because had I been the younger Takeila back, I would have been waiting on him to call me back. I would have been excited, like, yeah, call me back so we can set this up. But now that I'm an adult, it's just like, I'm not waiting for that. I'm not even yearning for that relationship anymore, because I know you're gonna disappoint me, so that's the, unfortunate truth behind it,
And he's not only disappointing you, he's disappointing his grandchildren that he doesn't even have a relationship with either, and he can have a relationship with them.
Absolutely. My daughter, she's 8, so she has an opinion. Mm-hmm. She has a mind. She's asked about him. She's asked about him before. Where's my granddad? Because her father's parents. His dad is deceased. Mm-hmm. So the only granddad she would have would be my dad. Mm-hmm. And I don't have him. He's here physically, but I don't have the relationship with him. So, I just explained to her that, we don't have that relationship. Mm-hmm. And I don't really think she understood why, but I just explained to her that we didn't have that relationship. But, hopefully one day you guys can have one, and, things will be good. But I don't want to set my kids up to ever rely or depend on that, just because I know him. I know that he's not anywhere worried about my grandkids or building that relationship, or if he is, he hasn't expressed that ever. So it's just kind of a tricky situation with that. Okay.
So I want to be nosy here. Tell us the real reason why you left the game that day.
Okay. Let's keep it real, right?
So, I'll be honest. I really have no desire to build that relationship with my father anymore, because it's just been so much disappointment in between time. It's just so many traumatic events that I can recount on. I'd rather not, because I don't think anything good would come out of it. I'm just going back into previous years of just certain things that me and him went through, all while trying to build a healthy relationship. I was like maybe 15, 16, and I asked him, I had just got my first car. My mom gave me her car. And I was asking him for gas money. And he was like, okay. He came by, he gave me $25 for gas. Maybe like 10, 15 minutes went by. He came back and asked me for the $25 back.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I will never forget that.
No.
No.
I will never never forget that.
Dad.
I would never have forgotten that either.
No.
Yeah, and that's something minuscule, but when you don't have that many memories with someone, things like that stick. Like, I remember this. I remember seeing his car pull up. I remember the look on his face I remember all of that, I could tell he was embarrassed to ask for it back, but he asked for it back and I gave it back, and, just thinking about things like that, I can recall a time where I was going through like one of my first heartbreaks, and I called my mom and I was crying. I was just so upset. And I don't know why, but she called my dad. And he came to my house. And, I sat on one couch. He sat on the other. I was probably 19 at the time. And he had no clue what to say to me. Like, I was just crying. He didn't even sit beside me and pat my, and he was just trying to find the words. But he really didn't know what to say. He was just like, well, Keila, some men are stupid. And, he was just like talking in circles. But it was never really anything that pepped me up. It was not a pep talk. It was not anything uplifting. It was just like he was struggling to help me. And so it was just, it's been, I can think back to so much. So going back to the day that I left the basketball game, all of those memories just always play in my head anytime someone speaks of his name or anytime I see him. And like I said, there's a lot of disappointment there. So when I saw him, I just decided to leave because I didn't want it to be a situation where I stayed there at the game and then he just completely ignores me, because then I'm really going to be hurt. And I also didn't want it to be a situation where he comes and sits next to me and we're talking as if you haven't spent the last 8-9 years not ever communicating or speaking to me either, because that's just as messed up, So I just ruled out all possibilities and removed myself from the situation, because I didn't want it to go either way. So that's the real reason why, because I'm at a point where I'm not open to reconciling anything, and I'm not at a point where I want to hate him either. I'm just at a point where I just would rather not be in company with them, if that makes sense. And
you don't want to continue to get hurt, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Been hurt enough, so he's like, I'm going to leave before he hurts me again. It's like a bad relationship, Yes.
Like I look at my relationship with him as like that was the first man to ever like break my heart. So I always look at it like a relationship. When you end a relationship with someone, you have to completely remove yourself from them or else you're just going to be constantly going in circles, falling back in. So I have to treat the relationship with my father the same way, unfortunately.
That was deep. He was the first man to break your heart. I felt that. I felt that. And I just hope that the listeners, parents, fathers in particular, who were incarcerated, that you are hearing this, and you're hearing this straight from a child who had a parent that was incarcerated, and because of the incarceration, because of his character, because he didn't come home and check on his child. I mean, look at the relationship. You know what I mean? And I'm glad you don't hate him, because it would do you more damage than him. So
absolutely,
it's a good thing that you don't hate him, but it's sad that that relationship isn't there, and that you basically have given up on him. You know what I mean? And
absolutely, yeah.
Some people will be like, "Oh no, don't forgive up. I mean, don't give up. You gotta always forgive him. That's your father." But like you said, when it comes to toxic relationships, I mean, it's almost like a person that's drowning. Sure, you'll go out and try to save them, but if they're kicking around and hitting you and pulling you down with them, what do? Do you drown with them, or do you say, okay, let me save myself and get out of here, because it's obvious?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because of his actions, right? His actions that kind of like trickles down into all your relationships. Unfortunately, it follows, because that's the man that was supposed to love you, that was supposed to bond with you. He disappointed you, and I would tend to think that it would have some type of effect on the rest of my relationships. You know what I mean? Do you agree?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
You
me being nosy again. As far as your relationships go, how are you on relationships?
My relationships are not the best. They're not the best. I wouldn't say I don't know how to build healthy relationships. I wouldn't say that, but I will say that I do have a shorter tolerance of just nonsense in relationships, and I know I can credit that to my father. Like it's just the tolerance is really low. You know, I'm just not one of those people that will just work things out. And I know sometimes that can be unhealthy because sometimes things can be worked through and worked out. But with me, I think it's just because I'm more so afraid of the disappointment that comes with it if they don't do a 360 and completely change.
Absolutely.
So my relationships aren't the best. I wish they were, different, more stable, more healthy, but they're not. And it's like I said, it's almost like a cycle a little bit, because my mother, she has 2 children. She isn't with either of the fathers. Me, I have 2 children, and I'm not with either of the fathers neither. I have valid reasons for not being with either of them. But at the same time, I know that my tolerance is really low, and that kind of probably contributed to the detriment of our relationship as well.
Gotcha. Wow. That is deep. So you can actually link that back to him. And I can see it.
Yeah.
I can definitely see it. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Okay, so because that was going to be one of my questions too was, as far as, future plans with him, is there ever a time that you're going to, kind of maybe sit down with him and try to make amends? But we know that that's out the picture. That's not happening, so.
It's not that, I hate to sound so aggressive about it, but I forgive him. I've forgiven him a long time ago, but it's just, I just think that I have to just move on. Because like Miss Arlene said, he's not only hurt me, he's hurt my grandchildren. He's hurt my mother. Just so many people have been hurt, and this is years of hurt, Who knows how many years my mom spent, hurt. I just spent 12 years, I don't know how long this affected my mother. And it's just a lot. I feel like if me and him ever were to come to a point where we could work things out, we would have to immediately go to therapy. We would need a third person to be involved, absolutely. And it would just have to be something that we would have to gradually work on. We would have to understand this is not something that can be fixed overnight because there's so much damage that has taken place over the course of a long time, so I would be open to it, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't have my hopes on things being resolved. I would probably go in with it with a mind of disappointment.
Got you. But that's interesting that you said that if you guys were to ever try to come together and try to make things work, that you would immediately need to go to therapy. You would need that.
Absolutely.
You would need that third person to kind of mediate. And I'm just from what you're telling me, I can just look at that situation and see how it would be, how you would you would be standoffish, which rightfully so, and I could see him be the same way, And if you don't have that third person there to kind of like coax you out of your shell, so to speak, because you're going to be guarded, because like you said, you're going to be expecting that ain't nothing going to work. It's going to be the same old. And, you don't have that person here to kind of bring both of y'all out to kind of meet each other halfway, then things can get really ugly. Exactly. So he doesn't strike me as the person who can really articulate his feelings well, as far as talking to you, because like you said, all of your interactions have been kind of awkward. So he may try to say something and it come out the wrong way. You'd be like, what? And then he get upset and be like, well, I'm your father. What are you talking? And then I can hear you. You my father. And then there you go. It's just like, kind of back and forth. So for people who don't know how we know Takeila, Arlene and I did a documentary earlier this year called Collateral Damage. So shout out to Eloise for allowing us to bring her vision to life with that documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and a shout out to Peachtree Methodist Baptist Church for giving us the opportunity to do the film project.
Yes, so we were definitely looking for people to interview, and Takeila came forth. And Takeila, you came all the way from Savannah?
Savannah.
Yep, absolutely. 4 hours away.
4 hours away to do that interview. Now, a quick question on that. When you gave that interview to us, is it therapeutic for you to talk about this stuff, or does it do more harm than good?
Oh, absolutely. It was very therapeutic for me to talk about it. And I'll be honest, I kind of wish that, once the documentary was out in public, that, once I was able to share it on my social media, that if my father so happened to watch it, it would have sparked interest, and it would have sparked something between him and I, even if it was just a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't. And I watched him watch it, because, certain social media platforms, you can see your viewers.
Mm-hmm.
So he saw the trailer. And, he still didn't say anything.
Wow.
So, I love, either way, I feel like my deed was done because I told my story, and I hope I helped someone interpret their feelings, if they're going through it currently. But my own personal agenda was to see if he would see it and see what his reaction would be to it, and see if it would, help him understand me and me understand him,
Especially seeing how much it hurt you.
Absolutely.
It was definitely a pleasure talking to you again.
Yes. Always nice to hear from you.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, most definitely. So we just, to kind of close this up, we just hope that your story has touched someone.
Yes.
Who's probably been debating on what they should do, or probably, touches a parent who feels like, hearing Takeila's story, I need to get back into my child's life and bridge that gap and do what I have to do to make sure that we break this cycle. Because you're right, it is a cycle in some sorts, because, you know what they say, hurt people. So it could be a situation where, because of him, you do what you do, and unbeknown to you, there's certain characteristics that can be being trickled down to your children, things that they may be seeing, and then in their relationships they may have that same zero tolerance for bull crap, and be like, listen, my mother didn't put up with it, I ain't putting up with it. You got one strike
and you're out.
It. Yeah, you know what I mean? So you never know. So
that's right.
We hope that people who are listening to this can say, it's time to break that cycle. Time for me to be the better person. Let me get with my daughter, let me get with my son, and try to, work this thing out. All right, so we are going to let you go, and we'll be in contact.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you guys for having me.
No, thank you.
I hope the listeners, who are hearing this today, I hope it brings in some form of clarity or some form of decision, if they are going through something similar to this, that's the goal, is to help someone, So
Definitely.
Thank you guys so much for allowing me to be a part of that.
No problem.
All right. Thank you
for sharing your story.